Hello guys, welcome to NCERT Science. We are going to read class 6 chapter number 6, the living organism, characteristics and habitat. Paheli and Bujo went on vacation to many places of interest. One such trip took them to the river Ganga in Rishikesh. They climbed the mountain of the Himalayas where it was very cold. They saw many kinds of trees on these mountains, oak, pines and deodars. Very different from the ones near their home on the plains. In yet another trip, they traveled to Rajasthan and moved on camel through the hot desert. They collected different kinds of cactus plants from these trips. Finally, they went on trip to Puri and visited the sea beach, dotted with casuarina trees, while recollecting all the fun that they had on these trips. A thought struck them. All these places were so different from one another. Some were cold, some very hot and dry, and some places so humid, and they all of them had many organisms, living creatures of various kinds. They tried to think of a place on earth where there may not be any living creatures. Bujo thought of a place near his home. Inside the house, he tried the cupboards. He had thought that there may not be any living organism here, but he found one tiny spider in the cupboard. Outside the home, too, there did not seem to be any place he could think of that did not have living creatures of some kinds of or the other. Paheli started thinking and reading about faraway places. She read that people have even found tiny living organisms in the opening of volcanoes. Organisms and the surrounding where they live. Another thought that occurring to Paheli and Bujo was about the kinds of living organisms that were present in different locations that they had visited. The desert had camels, the mountains had goats and yak, Puri had some other creature, crab on the beach, and such a variety of fish being caught by the fishermen at the sea. And then there did seems to be some creature like ants that were presented in all these different locations. The kinds of plants found in each of these regions were so different from the plants of the other region. What about the surroundings? In some different regions where they are seen. Activity 1. Let us start with a forest. Think of all the plants, animals and objects that can be found there. List them in column 1 of table 6.1. List things, animal and plants found in the other region that are also shown in table. You can collect examples scattered through the chapter to fill table 6.1. Discuss also with your friends, parents and teachers to find some example of fill the tables. You can also consult many interesting books in libraries that takes of animal, plant and minerals of the different region. Try and include many plants, animal and object, big and small, in each of the column in these tables. What kinds of object will we find that may not be animal or plant? Perhaps part of plant like dried leaves or part of animal like bones. We may also find different kinds of soil and pebbles. What is the ocean may have salts dissolved in it discussed in chapter 3. There could be many more objects. As we go through the chapter, keep adding more examples to table 6.1. We will discuss the table as we travel through many more interesting places. Habit and adaptations. What do you find from the plant and animal listed in activity 1? Did you find a large variety in them? Look at what you have entered in the column for the desert and the column for the sea in table 6.1. Did you list very different kinds of organisms in these two columns? What are the surroundings like in these two regions? In the sea, plants and animals are surrounded by saline salty water. Most of them use the air dissolved in water. There is very little water available in the desert. It is very hot in the daytime and very cold at night in the desert. The animal and plant of the desert live on desert soils and breathe air from the surrounding. The sea and the desert are very different surroundings, and we find very different kinds of plants and animals in the two regions. Isn't it? Let us look at two very different kinds of organisms from the desert and the sea, a camel and a fish. The body structure of camel help to it survive in desert condition. Camel have long legs which help to keep their body away from the heat of the sun. They excrete small amount of urine. Their dung is dry and they do not sweat. Since camel lost very little water from their body, they can live for many days without water. Let us look of different kinds of fish. Some of these are shown figure 6.3. There are so many kinds of fish, but do you see that they all have something common about their shape? All the ones shown here have the streamlined shape that was discussed in chapter 5. This shape helps them move inside water. Fish have slippery scales on their body. These scales protect the fish and also help in easy movement through water. We discussed in chapter 5 that fish have flat fins and tails that help them to change direction and help their body balance in water. Gills present in the fish help them use oxygen dissolved in water. We see that the feature of a fish help it to live inside water and the feature of camel help to survive in a desert. We have taken only two examples from a very wide variety of animal and plant that live on the earth. In all this variety of organisms, we will find that they have certain features that help them live in the surrounding in which they are normally found. The presence of a specific feature on certain habitat which enable an organism to live naturally in place is called adaptation. Adaptation of organisms differ depending on their place and dwelling. That is why a fish cannot live out of water and a camel cannot live in a sea. The place where organism lives in called habitat. Habitat means a dwelling place, a home. The habitat provides food, water, air, shelter and other needs to organisms. Several kinds of plants and animals live in the same habitat. The plants and animals that live on the land are said to live in terrestrial habitats. Some examples of terrestrial habitat are forest, grasslands, desert, coastals and mountain region. On the other hand, the habitat of plant and animal that live in water are called aquatic habitat. Lakes, rivers and oceans are some examples of aquatic habitats. There are a large variation among terrestrial habitat like forest, grassland, desert, coastals and mountain region located in different parts of the world. The organism, both plants and animals living in a habit, are its biotic component. The non-living things such as rocks, soils, air and water in habitat constitute the abiotic component. Are sunlight and heat abiotic or biotic? We know that some plants grow from seeds. Let us look at some abiotic factors are their effect on seeds and they grow into young plants. Activity 2. Recall activity 7 in chapter 4. We made sprouts from gram and maize seeds. When the seeds turned into a sprout, it is said to have germinated. This is the beginning of life of a new plant. Collect some drying mung seeds. Keep 20-30 seconds inside a soak. The rest in water for a day. Divide the soaked seed into 4 parts. Keep one part completely submerged in water for 3-4 days. Do not disturb the dry seeds and those submerged in water. Keep one part of soaked seed in a sunny room and another in a completely dark region like a cupboard that does not allow any light to come in. Keep the last part in very cold surrounding, say in the refrigerator or with ice around them. Rinse them and replace the water every day. What do you notice? After a few days, do the seeds in all the 5 conditions germinated uniformly? Do you find slower or no germination in any of this? Do you realize that abiotic factors like air, water, light and heat are important for the growth of plants? In fact, abiotic factors are important for all living organisms. We find that organisms exist in very cold as well as very hot climate, isn't it? How do they manage to survive? Adaptation is the method by which organisms get well adjusted to the climate. There are some changes that can happen in the organism over a short period of time to help them adjust to some changes in their surrounding. For instance, if we live in a plain and suddenly go to high mountain region, we may experience difficulty in breathing and doing physical exercise for some days. We need to breathe faster when we are high mountain. After some day, our body adjusts to the change condition on the high mountain. Such small changes that take place in body of a single organism over a short period to overcome small problem due to change in the surrounding are called acclimatization. These changes are different from adaptation that takes place over thousands of years. Adaptation does not take place in a short time because the abiotic factor of a region also change very slowly. Thus organisms cannot adapt to this change die, and only adapted ones survive. Organisms adapt to different abiotic factor in different way. This results in a wide variety of organisms with different habitat. Let us look at some habitat. Understood the abiotic factor and the adaptation of animal in these habitats. A journey through different habitats. Some terrestrial habitat, desert. We discussed the abiotic factor of a desert and the adaptation in camel. What about other animal and plant that are found in desert? Do they have the same kinds of adaptation? There are desert animals like rats and snakes which do not have long legs that a camel has to stay away from the intense heat during the day. They stay in burrows deep in the sand. These animals come out only during the night when it is cooler. So some typical plants that grow in a desert. How are these adapted to the desert? Activity 3. Bring a potted cactus and a leafy plant to the classroom. Tie polythene bag to some part of the two plants, as was done for activity 4 in chapter 4, where we study transpiration in plants. Leave the potted plant in the sun and observe after a few hours. What do you see? Do you notice any difference in the amount of water collected in two polythene bags? Desert plant lose very little water through transpirations. The leaves in desert plants are either absent, very small, or they are in the form of spines. These help in reducing loss of water from leaves through transpiration. The leaf-like structure you see in the cactus is in fact its stems. Photosynthesis in this plant is usually carried out by the stems. The stem is also covered with a thick waxy layer which help to retain water in the tissue of cacti. Most desert plants have roots that go very deep into the soil for water. Mountain region. These habitats are normally very cold and windy. In some areas, snowfalls may take place in winter. There is a large variety of plant and animal living in the mountain region. Have you seen the kinds of trees shown in figure 6.6? If you live in a mountain region or have visited one, you may have seen a large number of such trees, but have you ever noticed such trees naturally growing in other regions? How are these trees adapted to the condition prevailing in their habitat? These trees are normally cone-shaped and have sloping branches. The leaves of some of these trees are needle-like. This helps to rain water and snow to slide off easily. There could be trees with shapes very different from these that are also present on mountain. They may have different kinds of adaptation to survive on the mountain. Animals living in mountain region are also adapted to the condition there. They have thick skin or fur to protect them from cold. For example, yak have long hair to keep them warm. The snow leopard have thick fur on its body, including feet and toes. This protected its feet from the cold when it walked on the snow. The mountain goat has strong hooves for running up the steep slope of the mountain. As we go up in the mountain region, the surrounding changes and we see different kinds of adaptation at different height. Grassland. A lion lives in a forest or a grassland and is a strong animal that can hunt and kill animals like deer. It is light brown in color. Look at the picture of a lion and that of a deer. 6.8. How are the eyes placed in the face for these two animals? Are they in the front or on the sides of the face? Lions have long claws in their front legs that can be withdrawn inside the toes. Do the feature of lion help it in any way to survive? It is light brown color help it to hide a dry grasslands when it hunts for prey animal to eat. The eyes in front of the face allow it to have a correct idea about the location of its prey. A deer is another animal that lives in the forest and grassland. It has strong teeth for chewing hard plant stems of the forest. A deer need to know about the presence of predator, animal like lion that make it their prey, in order to run away from them and not become their prey. It is long ear to hear movement of predators. The eyes on the side of its head allow it to look in all directions for danger. The speed of a deer helps them to run away from the predator. There are many other features of a lion, a deer or other animal and plant that help them to survive in their habitat. Some aquatic habitat. Ocean. We already discussed how fish are adapted and lives in the sea. Many other sea animals have streamlet body to help them move easily in water. There are some sea animals like squid and octopus which do not have this streamlet shape. They stay deeper in the ocean near the sea and catch any prey that move toward them. However, when they move in water, they make their body shaped streamlet. These animals have gills to help them use oxygen dissolved in the water. There are some sea animals like dolphins and whales that do not have gills. They breathe in air through nostrils and blowholes that are located on the upper part of their head. These allow them to breathe in air when they swim near to the surface of water. They can stay inside the water for a long time without breathing. They come out to the surface from the time to time to breathe in the air. Did you ever see this interesting activity of dolphin in television program or film or ocean life? Ponds and lakes. Have you seen plants growing in ponds, lakes, river and even some drains? Go on a field trip and a nearby pond. It is possible and try to observe the kinds of plants that are seen there. Observe the leaves, stems and roots of these plants. Some of these plants have their roots fixed in the soil below the water. In terrestrial plants, roots normally play a very important role in the absorption of nutrition and water from the soil. However, in the aquatic plants, roots are much reducing in size and their main function is to hold the plant in place. The stem of these plants are long, hollow and light. The stem grow up the surface of water while the leaves and the flower float on the surface of water. Some aquatic plants are submerged in the water. All parts of such plants are underwater. Some of these plants have narrow and thin ribbon-like leaves. These can bend in the following water. In some submerged plants, leaves are often highly divided through which the water can easily flow without damaging them. Frogs usually live in ponds. Frogs can stay both inside the water as well as move on land. They have strong back legs that help them to leaping and catching their prey. They have webbed feet which help them swim in water. We have discussed only a few common animal and plant compared to the wide variety that lives in different habitats. You may have also noticed that very wide variety in plant around you when you prepared a herbarium as part of the suggested activity in chapter 4. Imagine the kind of variety that you could see in a herbarium of leaf or plant from all regions of the earth. Characteristics of organisms. We went on a journey through different habitats and discussed many plants and animals. In activity 1, we listed object, plant and animal found in different surroundings. Suppose we stop a while and think which examples in our list are living. Let us think of example from a forest: tree, creepers, small and big animal, bird, snakes, insects, rocks, soil, water, air, dry leaves, dead animals, mushroom and moss. Maybe only some of the objects that are present in the forest. Which of these are living? Think of objects that you can see around you at this moment and group them as living and non-living. In some cases, it is easy for us to know. For example, we know that objects like chair or table are not alive. Paheli was reading this rhymes from Complete Nonsense writing by Edward Lear. Set the table to the chair, you can hardly be aware how I suffer from the heat and from chilblains on my feet. If we took a little walk, we might have a little talk. Pray let us talk the air, set the table to the chair, set the chair to the table. Now you know we are not aware how foolishly you talk. Walk, set the table with a sign. It can do not harm to try. I have as many legs as you. Why can't we walk on too? Paheli and Bujo found the poem very funny because they knew that a chair on a table is not alive and it cannot talk or walk. Chair, a table, stone or a coin are not alive. Similarly, we do know that we are alive and so are all the people of the world. We also see animals around us that are so full of life: dogs, cats, monkeys, squirrels, insects and many others. How do we know that something is living? Often, it is not so easy to decide. We are told that plants are living, but they do not move like a dog or a pigeon. On the other hand, a car or a bus can move. Still, we consider them a non-living. Plants and animals appear to grow in size with time. But then, a time cloud in the sky also seems to grow in size. Does it mean that clouds are living? No. So, how does one distinguish between living and non-living things? Do living things have some common characteristics that make them very different from the non-living? You are wonderful examples of living beings. What characteristics do you have which make you different from the non-living things? List a few of these characteristics in your notebook. Look at your list and mark those characteristics that you have listed, which may also be found in animal or plant. Some of these characteristics are perhaps common to all living things. Do all organisms need foods? Earlier we learned that all living things need food and how essential it is to animals and to us. We have also learned that plants make their own food by the process of photosynthesis. Animals depend on the plants or other animals for their food. Food gives organisms the energy needed for them to grow. Organisms also need energy for the other life processes that go on inside them. Do all organisms show growth? Does the kurta you had 4 years back still fit you? You cannot wear it anymore, isn't it? You must have grown taller during this year. You may not realize it, but you are growing all the time, and in few more years you will become an adult. Young ones of animals also grow into adults. You would surely have noticed pups grow into adults. A chick hatches from an egg grown into a hen or a cock. Plant also grow. Look around you and see a few plants of particular type. Some are very small and young, some are bigger. They may all be in different stage of growth. Look at the plant after a few days and a week. You may find that some of them have grown in size. Growth seems to be common to all living things. Do you think non-living things show growth? Do all organisms respire? Can we live without breathing? When we inhale, the air moves from outside to the inside of our body. When we breathe out, the air moves from inside our body to outside. Breathing is a part of a process called respiration. In respiration, some of oxygen of the air we breathe is used by the body. We breathe out carbon dioxide produced in the process. The process of breathing in animals like cows, buffalo, dogs, or cat is similar to humans. Observe any one of these animals while they are taking rest and notice of the movement of their abdomen. This slow movement indicates that they are breathing. Respiration is necessary for all living organisms. It is through respiration that the body finally obtains energy from the food it takes. Some animals may have different mechanisms for the change of gases, which is a part of respiration process. For example, earthworms breathe through their skin. Fishes, we have learned, have gills for using oxygen dissolved in water. The gills absorb oxygen from air dissolved in water. Do plants also respire? Exchange of gases in plant mainly takes place through leaves. The leaves takes in air through tiny pores in them and use the oxygen. They give out oxygen, carbon dioxide to the air. We learned that in sunlight plants use carbon dioxide to produce food and give out oxygen. The amount of oxygen released in the process of food preparations by plant is much more than the oxygen they use in respiration. Respiration in the plant takes place day and night. Do all organisms respond to stimuli? How do you respond? If you suddenly step on a sharp object like a thorn while walking barefoot, how do you feel when you see or think about your favorite food? You suddenly move from a dark place into bright sunlight. What happens? Your eyes shut themselves automatically for a moment till they adjust to the change of bright surrounding. Your favorite food, bright light, and a throne in the above situation are some example of changes in your surrounding. All of us respond immediately to such changes. Changes in our surrounding takes place as to response to them are called stimuli. Do other animals also respond to stimuli? Observe the behavior of animal when food is served to them. Do you find them suddenly becoming active or seeing the food? When you move towards a bird, what does it do? Wild animals run away when bright light is flashed toward them. Similarly, cockroaches begin to move to their hiding place if the light in the kitchen is switched on at the night. Can you give some more example of response of animal to stimuli? Do plants also respond to stimuli? Flowers of some plants bloom only at night. In some plants, flower close after sunset. In some plants like mimosa, commonly known as touch me not, leaves close or fold when someone touches them. These are some examples of response of plant toward change in their surrounding. Activity 4. Place a potted plant in a room a little away from the window through which sunlight enters sometimes during the day. Continue watering the plant for a few days. Does the plant grow upright like plant out in the open, not the direction in which it bends? If it is not growing upright, do you think this may be in response to some stimulus? All living things respond to change around them. Living organism and excretion. All organisms need food. Not all the foods that is eaten is completely used. Only a part of it is utilized by the body. What happened to the rest? This has to be removed from the body and as wasted. Our body produces some wastage in other life process also. The process of getting rid of wastage by organism is known as excretion. Do plants also excrete? They do, but not as seen in animals. The mechanism in plants are little different. Some plants find it is possible to store the waste product within their part in a way that they do not harm the plant as a whole. Some plants remove waste product as secretion. Excretion is another characteristic common to all organisms. Do all organisms reproduce their own kinds? Have you ever seen nest of some birds like pigeon? Many birds lay their eggs in the nest. Some of the eggs hatches and young birds come out of them. Animals reproduce their own kinds. Mode of reproduction may be different in different animals. Some animals produce their young ones through eggs. Some animals give birth to the young ones. Plants also reproduce like animal. Plants also differ in their mode of reproduction. Many plants reproduce through seeds. Plants produce seeds which can germinate and grow into the new plants. Some plants also reproduce through part other than seeds. For example, a part of potato with a bud grow into a new plant. Plants also reproduce through cutting. Would you like to grow a plant in this way yourself? Activity 5. Take a cutting from a rose or a mehendi plant, fix it in the soil and water it regularly. What do you observe after a few days? It may not be easy to grow plant from cutting. Do not be disappointed if your cutting does not grow. Talk to a gardener if possible on the care to be given to cutting them, make them grow into a plant. Living things produce more of their own kind through reproduction. It takes place in many different ways for different organisms. Do all organisms move? In chapter 6, we discussed the various ways in which animals move. They move from one place to another and also show other body movement. What about plants? Do they also move? Plants are generally anchored in soil, so they do not move from one place to another. However, various substances like water, mineral, and the foods synthesized by them move from one part of the plant to other. Have you noticed any other kinds of movement in plants? Opening or closing of flowers? Do you recall some plants show movement in response to certain stimuli? We also have some non-living things moving, of course, a bus, a car, a small piece of a paper, cloud, and so on. Is there something different in this movement from the movement of living beings? There is such a variety of living organisms, but all of them show some common characteristics as we have discussed. Yet another common characteristic is that living beings die because organisms die. Particularly types of organisms can survive over thousands of years only if they reproduce their own kinds. One single organism may die without ever reproducing, but the types of organisms can exist only if there is reproduction. We see that all living things seem to have some common characteristics. They all need food, respire, reproduce, so movement, grow, and die. Do we find some non-living things that also show some of these characteristics? Car, bicycle, clocks, and the water in the river move. The moons move in the sky. A cloud grows in size right in front of our eyes. Can such things be called living? We ask ourselves, do these objects also show all the other characteristics of living things? In general, something that is living may have all the characteristics that we have discussed, while non-living things may not show all these characteristics at some time. And this is always true. Do we always find that living things definitely show all the characteristics of the living that we have discussed? Do we always find that non-living things may show only some of these characteristics and never all of them? To understand this a little better, let us look at a specific example. Consider any seed, say moon. Is it living? It can. stay in a shop for a month and not show any growth of some of the other characteristics of life. However, we bring the same seeds and plant it in soil, water it, and it's turn into a whole plant. Did the seeds need food? Did it excrete, grow, or reproduce when it was in the shop for many months? We see that there can be cause when we cannot easily say that a thing has all the characteristics that we have discussed for it to be called living. What then is life? Push your hand deep inside a sack of wheat. Do you find it is there is some heat being produced inside the sack of wheat? Seeds respire and it that process gave out some heat. We see that respiration, the process takes place in the seed even when some of the other life process may not be very active. It may not be very easy to answer your question, what then is life? However, looking at the all diversity of living beings around us, we can conclude that life is beautiful. Keywords: adaptation, aquatic habitat, biotic component, excretion, growth, habitat, living, reproduction, respiration, stimulus. Thank you.